I think the first best practice that I want to address here is that email has really become kind of a central component to aligning multiple channels in financial service institutions, particularly in the top performing institutions. So, email is the link that really brings mobile, and, creating mobile formatted emails or giving them a link to a mobile formatted email has become critically important, knowing that people are going to access these emails. And if it is a customer service type email, if it is a customer communication, then you want to give them the ability to access it anywhere. And also having links to register for SMS alerts. I mean, people are increasingly, and so you can use email to bridge that gap, have them register, get their phone number, and start creating that database. From a website perspective, links to your website, to collateral that's online, obviously email has always been a great source of that, or to register for newsletters. And then from a social perspective, if you can aggregate customer reviews or aggregate market trends and coverage on what's going on in social channels, you can add a lot of value, and you can deliver those kinds of communications over email to really extract some significant value for folks. So to get into this conversation, here's where we kind of make the research findings and the market trends actionable. And I want to start by, a change in how you evaluate marketing success as a financial service marketer. And so I want to think about these goggles. You're going to put on some crazy goggles for a minute. It's actually not crazy at all. But if you think about every communication as a value or preference-driven communication, then you start to really define how you should be engaging with the market. And what do I mean by that? Well, there are two major goals, I think, for a financial services marketer. There are two big questions you should ask yourself. One is, are you delivering value to customers and prospects when you engage with them? So from that value-based communication standpoint, you have to ask yourself, what do customers and prospects really need and want from a financial institution? What do they actually need? What helps them? And then on a preference side, you've got to think about every communication as also being preference-based. And the thing is, how do you really, how do customers want to engage, and how do you add value over time? And the decisions you make about channel and communication should be based on customer preference. So let's give an example of this. And here's the best one I think that everyone will perk up. So if you apply this concept of value communication and preference communication to this question of how do we incorporate social media for a financial institution, well, here's how we frame it. And these are supposed to be gold frames, by the way. You're framing the context for the question. So I guess the first question is, do customers want to engage with a financial institution on a social media channel? And so, we had a lot of institutions that ran out and created a Facebook page and failed miserably. And if they had asked this and thought, do people want to friend their bank? It's not that they love their bank, but it's not that they just don't want to friend it. I know I wouldn't. So I guess you have to look at, what do customers really value? Do they need to friend their bank and have, an association to the bank's brand? No, they value convenience and time savings. And if you're not delivering that over social channels, you're probably not engaging them the way you should. And from a preference standpoint, how can we elevate the online conversation? If they don't really care about friending our bank, can we help them through social channels? Maybe. If you were to aggregate consumer comments and, if someone's going to make a decision about a bank and they could see, 1,000 people really, had a great experience and ranked as high because they were commenting about it on their, Twitter page or something, that might be pretty valuable for folks. If you could mitigate consumer complaints by actively monitoring those social channels and make sure that if someone is unhappy and they do say something, you address that right away, and you're known as a company that's on top of, what's going on out there, and you're addressing your customers' concerns and issues. So I think with these framings in mind, investments in social media marketing may not generate sufficient return on investment for a financial institution. So social media is really going to be more about monitoring and less about marketing in social media. So let's talk about some examples of best practice examples of value and preference. And I think the most obvious one for me is this use of digital market update newsletters. So I can actually register with some banks, and I have a couple banks that I do business with, and a few of them have these newsletters that I register for, or digital rate watch alerts, where they're going to tell me if the rate drops to a certain level, and I get an automated email. And so it's really about providing communication channels for both customers and prospects. You're not really selling, you're adding value. And let's show you an example of this. So I actually opted in. This is with my bank. I opted in to getting a rate alert, and it's a communication. It's a preferred channel. I said yes. I want an email. I'm going to give you. I'm interested in what I'm. I even gave them the type of loan. So they have some very interesting information just by me opting in. But then what's really cool is you layer in, and this on the right here is the actual email campaign that they gave me. You're giving me relevant and timely information. You're saying, hey, the rate has hit this amount. You asked me to tell you this. They have an opportunity to cross-sell and upsell through advertisements, the little box there. I mean, they could take advantage of that if they knew there were other products that might be relevant to me. And there's that call to action. Hey, if you're ready to do something, why don't you give me a buzz? Well, I think that all of this is really speaking very well to the customer buying cycle. This idea that, people, when they make purchases, they engage in a number of channels, and they have different needs. And so at the very beginning of this customer buying cycle, and I classify it as attention, interest, desire, action. At the very beginning, at the attention stage, somebody may not know that they have a problem. So for a financial services marketer, you have to think about how you're going to talk to that individual. If they don't know that they have a problem that you're addressing with a particular product or service, does it matter if you give them a promotion or, a great, deal, or give them free, for a new checking account? If they don't see a perceived value yet, it's not even worth trying to sell to them. So it's really about mapping your content at the right stage in a prospect's mind. And so it's not just about how you are engaging with the target audience, it's about what you are engaging with. And I think this is absolutely critical from a digital standpoint for a financial services marketer. So content is king, and I think that financial services marketers are blessed with a million reasons to communicate. In some industries, content has to be created in order to engage with people and help them understand there's a problem. In financial services, there's information about fund performance, rate alerts, market analysis, current events. There's all kinds of reasons to communicate with prospects, not even people are customers yet, and to give them some value. And I think the issue, though, is it's a double-edged sword. You're really churning out fresh new content, and it's a challenge because you have to have somebody available to create that content and manage it and manage the campaign. And then customizing that content by channel is also a challenge. So I think what we need to do is really deep dive on the content lifecycle in financial services, which segues nicely into the digital lifecycle in financial services, which is the topic of the webinar. From a content standpoint, if you think about, kind of starting here where you're producing content, you're editing it internally in the back end, you have portfolio managers or whoever is creating and editing this content, you're approving it through legal and governance and all those processes, you're publishing it, you're retiring it eventually, and you want to store it somewhere. What's core to this process is that there's a repository for all this content. And your goal, in theory, from a content lifecycle approach, is that you want to take this content that you've created and you want to apply it to different channels, marketing channels, print, web, email. We're going to take all this content and do that. And it's an integrated approach. Here's the reality, and we all know it. It's not an integrated approach in a financial services institution. And so content is typically being created separately for print and separately for web or email, for example. And it's all kind of siloed, and it creates a huge challenge from a digital marketing standpoint. So it's a fragmented and disconnected process in the back end, which essentially makes it very difficult to utilize this content in a digital channel. And we certainly see that in the research. I think this is reinforced here with finding time and resources to develop more personalized content and integrating technology for targeting and personalization. Just really, financial institutions struggle, and this is compared to all top performers, by the way. The light blue is top performers in the entire survey, not just financial services. But I do think, for this industry, we really need to look at how do we start to bring in and align and integrate that back office and that content lifecycle so we're seeding every channel with the same content and not having to create it over again. So I think that, from a digital engagement standpoint, it's evolving, but it will fragment and increase in complexity if you don't address back office content creation issues. And, I call this a modular approach to content. You should be creating content that you can apply online and offline in a context of a value-added engagement and a preference-added engagement, your preference communication and a value communication. And so that modular content, or also called components of content, is what you really need to think about so that it is seeding the digital engagement strategy for your organization. So wrapping things up, key themes from the research, you want to use digital engagement for more than customer communication because relevance drives revenue. You want to create those unique customer experiences in digital channels that map to the customer's buying cycle. You need to be able to have a communication that's very relevant to this individual, regardless of where, what you want to tell them. They need to hear what they want to hear at the right time in their buying process. Start conversations through value and preference. You should be evaluating the channels that you're operating in based on whether or not you can add value and if someone actually wants you to engage with them there. And then the quality of digital engagement is contingent on the quality of your content, obviously. So you want to start looking at integrating online and offline in the back office.